As you just saw, our choir, as with other groups here at Seaside, is all about belonging to something. It's about individuals coming together to be a part of something bigger than just themselves in order to offer praise and thanksgiving to God and to lead us in the worship of God. And one of the most amazing ways they do this every year is through our annual Christmas cantata. Now, raise your hand if you've ever attended a Seaside Christmas cantata. Just about everybody, if you've lived in this community for more than a year, you have probably been to a cantata. It's remarkable what they are able to accomplish. And in fact, it's not only remarkable, but I think Catherine would sometimes say it's even miraculous. Because that first rehearsal, she's thinking it is going to take a miracle to pull this one off. Nevertheless, through the gifts that she has, through her leadership, through the way that she is able to teach this ragtag bunch up here that you see every week, they're able to come together to create something remarkable. Now, when do you all begin rehearsing? Like after Thanksgiving, first week of December? Is that about when you start? No, of course not. They work for months and months on the cantata. And more than once, I have heard a choir member say, this Christmas music is stuck in my head. Because we might hear it once or maybe twice in December, but they hear it on Labor Day, on Halloween, on Thanksgiving, and beyond. But you don't have to be in the choir to know what it's like to get a song stuck in your head, do you? We all know what that experience is like. It might be a song like, "This is the Song That Never Ends." Or maybe if you had kids or grandkids during the Barney era, you heard a lot of "I love you, you love me." How about "Who Let the Dogs Out?" Or "It's a Small World After All," right? Yeah. Maybe it's an ad campaign. Right now we're hearing a lot of "Nationwide is on Your Side." Or perhaps my favorite, the Meow Mix song. Meow, 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 meow. You get the point, right? Each of these songs gets stuck in our minds. That's the whole point. It's called a hook. And every successful song or ad campaign must have one. They call it a hook because it grabs us, and it's very hard for us to wiggle free from that song playing in our mind. And after a while, we may not even realize that it's there. Its voice just becomes a part of who we are. Well, in our text this morning, our scripture passage, we read a very familiar story. Adam and Eve in the garden. The snake enters the scene, convinces them to eat the fruit, and, well, as we say, the rest is history. Now, poor Eve, she tends to get a really bad rap here, and causing the downfall of the entire human race might do that to your reputation. We tend to think, my goodness, they had everything they could have ever wanted. All they had to do was stay away from one measly tree. I could have done that. But the source of Eve's temptation here is much more complex than simple rebellion or desire. The source of Eve's temptation was a hook, a line, a song that began to play in her mind. Without this fruit, you aren't enough. You need something else. Without the fruit, you can't be who God fully created you to be. You need something outside of yourself in order to be made whole. You see, the root of this temptation from the serpent wasn't necessarily a desire for power or for knowledge. Instead, it was the first time that Eve heard a voice tell her that who she was and who God created her to be wasn't enough. It was a song, it was a hook that began to play. When put into this context, this story might hit a little closer to home because it goes beyond simple disobedience and leads to a mistrust in God and even in our own selves. It's a story that continues to play itself out because it is a song that continues to play even in the hearts and minds of God's children. For even we have been convinced and are being convinced that we're not enough, That we are not enough to please God or to please one another, that in order to truly belong, we need something else. We need to do or say or be something else. There is a song playing in every one of our minds. There is a voice telling us who we are. And not only does that song tell us who we are, it can eventually dictate who we become. Perhaps the song that plays in your mind comes from your childhood. Why can't you be more like your brother? Why are you always disappointing me? You're never going to amount to anything. You don't really even fit in with the family. You're just not good enough. And even though those words may have been spoken to you 60 or 70 or 80 years ago, you have spent every day since trying to do or be or say something else in order to be enough. Yet the song continues to play in your mind. Or maybe for you, the song comes from a former spouse or a relationship. You're worthless. You're not lovable. You're not what I need. You're not good enough for me. And you have spent every day since trying to do or be or say something else in order to change that song, yet it continues to play in your mind. Or God forbid, and I mean that quite literally, the voice that plays in your head is from a pastor or some other Christian or church teacher who taught you that you're not good enough for God. That you don't pray enough, you don't read the Bible enough, you don't give enough, you sin too much, you're not moral enough. And you've spent every day since trying to do or be or say enough to change that song, but it continues to play, and it only seeks to cause further separation and alienation from God. You see, our minds are incredibly powerful. They drive our perception of reality. Just about every psychologist will tell you that you become what you believe you are. In that original orchard, God had given humanity everything. All that we needed to do was participate in what God was already doing in the world. It was not God who said you must do more or be more or say more. It was the serpent who said, you are not enough. And it wasn't until Eve listened to a voice other than God's that she began to feel inadequate or that something else was needed. But here is the good news today. You are enough. You are enough because God is everything. You are enough not because of anything you have done, but simply because of who you are. A child of the Creator. You are enough not because there is anything high and mighty in you, but because the Almighty stoops down to be with you. You are enough not because you are infallible, but because the perfect love of Christ has been applied to your life. This is not about me just trying to boost your self-esteem today. This is about Christ, who Paul wrote was the one who did not count esteem as something to be held onto, but rather emptied himself in order to come to this earth and to give his life on the cross. This is not, I'm okay, you're okay. This is not self-help pop psychology. Because, folks, we know that there is not enough self-help in the world to change that song that is playing in your head. In fact, the very nature of the Gospels teaches us that self-help is a myth. Because if we could help ourselves, we would not have needed that. We would not have needed the cross. The cross is the ultimate voice of God saying, you are enough. The cross is the ultimate voice of God saying, I will take on the death and shame of a common criminal in order to defeat your shame forever. The cross is the ultimate voice of God saying, quit with your religion, quit eating the forbidden fruit, quit trying to work so hard to get to me. Because the cross is the ultimate voice of God saying, no, I have come to you because you belong to me. Everything we need to know about God and everything we need to know about ourselves can be seen on the cross. It breaks the perception that we are worth nothing. Because God paid an unsurpassable price, we have unsurpassable worth. Not because of who we try to be, not because of what we say or do, but simply because we are children of the Creator. And the rest of the New Testament only serves to further this point. The Apostle Paul teaches us something remarkable, that even though we continue to falter, even though we continue to live as less than God intended, we are still blameless before God because God sees us through the lens of Christ. That even though we are imperfect in the way we love and we are harmful in the way we create fear, we are a new creation. Not are becoming a new creation or will one day be a new creation. We are a new creation. This is the reality that God sees when God looks at us. No longer do we have that voice saying, "Why can't you be like your brother?" or "You don't do anything right." We are blameless because the love of the cross has been poured upon us, and there is nothing we can do or say or think or believe in order to earn God's favor, because it is a gift. It's a gift that we call grace. But here is where your part begins. Because you have a choice every day to decide which song is going to play in your head. Will it be the song from your parent or your spouse or your boss or your own religious guilt? Or will it be the song of the one who gave up everything just to be with you? We can't control what thoughts pop into our heads, but we sure can control which ones we allow to stay there. Romans 12, chapter 2 notes that we must fight against the patterns of this world by continually making new in our mind the things that God says are true about us. God proclaims that we are forgiven and freed. We are holy and blameless. We are filled with God's Spirit. We are more than conquerors. We are freed from the laws of sin and death. That is the narrative by which we need to live our lives. That is how we remind ourselves of who we really are in the kingdom of God. Cast aside the voice that says that who you are right now in this moment is not enough to please God. Cast aside the voice that says if you pray more, read the Bible more, do more at church, and give more money, then God might be pleased with you. Yes, it's true that we should strive every day to be a better follower of Jesus than we were yesterday. But if your motivation for discipleship and service comes from a sense that you are not already fully loved and embraced by God, then you're simply trying to earn a gift that has already been given. Discipleship and service should never come out of a fear that we aren't enough to please God. Discipleship and service should come out of a response to the embrace and the wholeness that God already offers to us. Discipleship and service are never about earning God's favor. They are about responding to God's love. Adam and Eve ate of the fruit because they wanted to be like God. Many of us still have that temptation today. We have bought into this idea that in order to be faithful followers, we must be like God, but we forget that, guess what, folks? We're not God. We were never created to be God. We are humans, and we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We hear the scriptures say, "Be holy as I am holy." And we boil this gigantic concept down to just a moral standard of living. But author and teacher Rob Bell offers a more accurate translation of this passage. Be whole as I am whole. Be an entire human being and embrace what that means. Look at the example of Jesus not only as the perfect and full revelation of God, but the perfect and full revelation of what we can be. Children of God who are confident in our place in God's family. Children of God who are filled with so much hope that we can go out into the world and we can bring healing and restoration. Children of God who are so confident in God's plan of redemption that we can live lives of nonviolent resistance in the face of injustice and maybe even death. This is how we become holy. This is how we become whole. When we realize that God created us to be us and delights in who we are. God delights in you because you are the exact essence of who God created you to be. It's true that we live in a broken age. It's true that we are in need of spiritual and physical healing, but our brokenness is not a reason for God to cast us aside. Rather, our brokenness is the very reason why we are held so tightly. There is nothing external that can ever separate us from the love of God. Not life or death or height nor depth, principalities or powers. The only thing that can separate you from God is the voice that tells you that you're separated from God. The voice that tells you that there's just one more thing you need in order to be whole. The voice that tells you that when you hear God say, "I love you," that you can't actually trust that. The voice that tells you that you are not holy, you are not good enough. In short, the only thing that can separate you from God is you. The choice is yours. Which song are you going to allow to play in your mind? Let the song that is stuck in your head be the one that tells you of who you really are in the eyes of your Creator. Not a fallen and wretched and sinful man or woman living under the wrath of God, but rather a beloved child who can never be separated from the love of God. I hope that the hook that is stuck in your mind is a hook that tells you that nothing can separate you. Let the hook that is stuck in your mind be the one where God says, "Let me captivate your thoughts." Let the hook that is stuck in your mind be the one where God says, "You are a new creation." This is the hook that I hope transforms you, that captivates your thoughts, that gives you hope. This is the hook that I hope will hold you. Thanks be to God, the one who has given us everything and simply welcomes us home.